I need you to listen to me very carefully, because the story I am about to tell you has been buried under the highest level of classification for the last 18 months. What we are discussing today is not just a government program. It is a preparation for war. At 4 a.m. this morning, a defense contractor whistleblower leaked a series of redacted procurement documents to a German investigative newspaper. Within hours, those documents were scrubbed from the internet. But the information is out, and it changes everything we thought we knew about the current standoff with China. The documents refer to something called Project Vault. On the surface, it looks like a logistical budget line. But when you dig into the numbers, as our analysts have done all morning, you find something terrifying. Project Vault is not a drill. It is a $12 billion off-the-books initiative to stockpile critical strategic resources. But they aren't stockpiling oil. They aren't stockpiling ammunition. They are stockpiling rare earth elements: dysprosium, neodymium, lithium-6, the specific, irreplaceable minerals required to build guidance chips for hypersonic missiles and night vision optics. Why does this matter? Because for the last 20 years, China has controlled 90% of this supply chain. If Beijing cuts us off, the U.S. military goes blind in 6 months. Project Vault is the Pentagon's secret answer. We have confirmed that the U.S. government has been quietly buying up these materials through shell companies in Australia, Canada, and Africa, and shipping them to a classified storage facility deep within the Nevada desert. We are talking about a stockpile large enough to sustain a full-scale industrial war for 3 years without a single import from China. Think about what that means. You do not spend $12 billion to hide a mountain of minerals in the desert unless you expect the supply line to be cut. You do not build a doomsday reserve unless you believe doomsday is on the schedule. This morning, Beijing knows. And the reaction from the Chinese Communist Party has been immediate silence, which is the loudest sound in geopolitics. They know that Project Vault isn't just a safety net. It is the removal of their leverage. It is the United States cutting the economic handcuffs before throwing the first punch. The whistleblower who leaked this calls it the pre-war trigger. He claims that the Pentagon's timeline for conflict has moved up, and this stockpile was the final box that needed to be checked before the diplomatic gloves come off. We're going to take you inside the vault. We're going to show you what they are hiding, why they are hiding it, and why the sudden exposure of this project might have just accelerated the timeline for World War III. To understand why this leak is causing panic in Beijing, you have to understand the invisible war that has been raging for the last decade. Most people think of warfare in terms of aircraft carriers and missiles. But the real war, the one that decides who wins before a shot is fired, is fought over the periodic table. For 20 years, China has executed a brilliant, long-term strategy to corner the market on the vitamins of modern industry. We are talking about rare earth elements. These aren't just rocks. They are the unique chemical ingredients that make high-tech weaponry possible. Without neodymium, the electric motors that steer a nuclear submarine run silent. They become loud and detectable. Without lanthanum, the night vision goggles used by special forces, they go dark. Without dysprosium, the guidance fins on a Tomahawk cruise missile, they melt from the heat of re-entry. Here is the terrifying reality that the Pentagon has been trying to hide. The United States Defense Industrial Base is addicted to Chinese minerals. If President Xi Jinping decided to cut off exports tomorrow morning, assembly lines at Lockheed Martin and Raytheon would grind to a halt within 3 weeks. We would have F-35 fighter jets sitting on the tarmac with empty avionics bays because the magnets inside the radar systems couldn't be manufactured. China knows this. They have called it their nuclear option in trade negotiations. In 2023, they fired a warning shot by restricting the export of gallium and germanium, two metals critical for semiconductor chips. That was a message. It said, "We control the inputs. You only build what we allow you to build." This is why Project Vault is so dangerous. It is the United States secretly breaking the handcuffs. By quietly spending $12 billion to stockpile these specific materials from alternative sources in Australia, Vietnam, and Africa, the Pentagon has effectively neutralized China's biggest strategic advantage. They have bought an insurance policy that says, "Go ahead, cut us off. We have a 3-year supply buried in the Nevada desert." This changes the calculus of war. As long as China held the keys to our supply chain, they believed the U.S. would never risk a full-scale conflict over Taiwan or the South China Sea. They believed we were too dependent to fight. Project Vault proves they were wrong. It proves that for the last 18 months, the United States has been preparing for a complete decoupling. And the timing of this leak could not be worse. It comes just days before a scheduled high-level summit between U.S. and Chinese diplomats. The Chinese delegation now knows that their leverage has evaporated. They are walking into a room where their opponent has just revealed a royal flush. But there is a darker side to this stockpile. You don't hoard resources for peace. You hoard resources for a siege. And what we are seeing in these leaked documents suggests that the Pentagon believes a siege is coming much sooner than the public has been told. This brings us to the most terrifying detail in the entire leak. It is not just what they are buying, it is when they need it. The procurement orders for Project Vault have a hard deadline. The Pentagon has instructed its contractors that the stockpile must be fully operational and sealed by October 2026. Why October 2026? Because that date aligns perfectly with what intelligence analysts call the Davidson window. For those who don't know, Admiral Philip Davidson, the former commander of Indo-Pacific Command, warned Congress that China would have the capability to invade Taiwan by 2027. But new intelligence suggests that timeline has accelerated. The completion date of Project Vault tells us that the Pentagon believes the window has shifted. They are rushing to close the vulnerability before the end of this year. This is a race against time. The leaked documents show expedited shipping manifests. We are seeing massive quantities of lithium-6 and heavy rare earths being airlifted, not shipped by sea, but airlifted from mines in Africa directly to the Nevada depot. You do not airlift rocks unless you are in a panic. You do not pay air freight premiums on thousands of tons of ore unless you believe the sea lanes might be closed tomorrow. This urgency signals one thing. The United States expects a kinetic event in the Pacific within the next 12 to 18 months. And here is the strategic nightmare. China knows this too. By leaking Project Vault, we have essentially told Beijing that we are preparing to weather their blockade. We have told them that by October 2026, their economic weapon will be useless. This creates a dangerous paradox. If China knows that their leverage expires in October, they have a massive incentive to strike before then. They have an incentive to use their economic weapon while it still hurts. We have entered the red zone, the most dangerous period in the transition from peace to war. The existence of this stockpile confirms that the era of strategic ambiguity is dead. The United States is no longer guessing if a conflict will happen. They are investing billions of dollars to survive it. But Project Vault isn't just about survival. It is about what comes after the initial strike. The documents reveal a secondary objective that has barely been touched by the mainstream media, and it involves the aggressive onshoring of the entire processing capability. This brings us to the dirty secret of the rare earth industry. The one detail that usually kills every attempt to break away from China. You can dig all the ore you want, but if you cannot refine it, you are just stockpiling expensive dirt. For the last 20 years, the United States has been trapped in a humiliating cycle. We mine rare earths at Mountain Pass in California, put them on a ship, send them to China for processing, and then buy them back at a premium. Why? Because refining rare earths is toxic, expensive, and environmentally messy. China was willing to do the dirty work. We weren't. Project Vault ends that arrangement. The leaked documents confirm a massive allocation of funds, not just for purchasing minerals, but for emergency refining infrastructure. We are seeing federal grants fast-tracked for processing facilities in Texas and California that are designed to come online in months, not years. And here is the part that will cause a political firestorm. To make this happen, the administration is reportedly issuing national security waivers to bypass decades of environmental regulations. They are slashing the green tape. The logic is brutal, but simple. You cannot fight a 21st century war with a 20th century permitting process. The Pentagon has argued that the risk of Chinese domination outweighs the risk of local pollution. They are pushing through permits that would normally take 5 years to approve, and they are doing it in 5 weeks. This is the total decoupling strategy in action. We aren't just buying an insurance policy against a blockade. We are building an entirely new industrial ecosystem from scratch. We are onshoring the most difficult, dangerous part of the supply chain. When you combine the stockpile in Nevada with the new refineries in Texas, you see the full picture. The United States is systematically closing every vulnerability that Beijing has exploited for a generation. We are closing the processing gap. But there is one final question that hangs over this entire operation. If we are preparing for a world where we don't need China, and China is preparing for a world where they don't need the US dollar, where does that leave us? This brings us to the final, uncomfortable question that hangs over this entire operation. If the United States is racing to build a shield by October 2026, and China knows it, where does that leave us right now? We have entered what military strategists call the zone of maximum danger. Think about it from Beijing's perspective. For 20 years, their monopoly on rare earth minerals has been their economic nuke. It was the one weapon they could use to cripple the American military without firing a single shot. But Project Vault neutralizes that weapon. By leaking this program, we have effectively told China, your window of opportunity is closing. After October, your leverage is gone. This creates a terrifying paradox. By preparing for war, we might have just incentivized it. If China believes they are about to lose their greatest strategic advantage, they have a massive incentive to act now, before the stockpile is full, before the refineries in Texas come online, and before the civilian shield is in place. We are seeing signs that this acceleration is already happening. Intelligence reports from the last 48 hours indicate a surge in Chinese naval activity around Taiwan and a renewed crackdown on mineral exports that feels less like a trade tactic and more like a pre-war lockdown. The United States is betting $12 billion that we can win this race. We are betting that we can dig, ship, and refine our way to independence before the shooting starts. Project Vault is not just a budget item. It is the sound of the world's two superpowers locking the doors and loading their weapons. The era of global trade is over. The era of the fortress economy has begun. We will continue to monitor the leak, the stockpile in Nevada, and the reaction from Beijing. This is Apex Brief. The timeline has shifted. The preparations are visible, and the clock is ticking toward October. Subscribe and turn on notifications. We will see you in the next briefing.